Hello, friends, and welcome to Pour and Explore Wine, Food, and Travel Stories from around the world. I'm Nick Elliott, the Wine Guy. This is where we sip, savor, and wander through the world of wine, explore incredible food, and uncover the stories behind unforgettable destinations. Each week, you'll hear engaging conversations with wine pros, chefs, travelers, and fellow enthusiasts, plus educational episodes to help you sip smarter and explore deeper. So, grab a glass, pull up a chair, and let's pour, explore, and celebrate the good life. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we are slowing down and taking a seat at the table to talk about something we do every single day: eat. But we aren't just talking about what is on your plate, we are talking about how you feel about it. If you've ever felt guilty about eating a donut, or if you ever found yourself being good, quote unquote, on a diet only to crash later, this episode is for you. We're diving into the psychology of eating, the myth of good versus bad foods, and how to actually enjoy your meals, whether you're at home or, more importantly, traveling the world. Joining me today is Shelly Najjar. Shelly is a registered dietitian nutritionist and a certified intuitive eating counselor with a master's in public health nutrition. She specializes in helping people build a healthy, joyful relationship with food by addressing the why and how we eat rather than just the what. In this conversation, we explore her all foods fit philosophy, which might just change the way you look at a menu forever. We also discuss the science of satisfaction and why, quote unquote, cheating has a diet to a mindset trap. And she shares a fascinating experiment involving a purple elephant that explains why restrictive diets often fail. Plus, for my fellow travelers, Shelley drops some practical advice on how to handle food on the road without losing your mind or your energy. So pour yourself a glass, take a deep breath, and let's get into it. Here is my conversation with Shelly Najjar. All right, Shelly, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be on.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, this is a wine, food, and travel podcast, and I would be remiss without asking you, someone who's a professional foodie, food person. Let's start with your favorite food memory. What was on the plate and what made it so special?
I don't have one specific thing. I have several food memories. My family always jokes that I live my life or document my life through my food. So even like one of our first driving trips, like our road trip that we took as a family, my travel journal was all about the food stops. Even if it was like a fast food place or whatever it was all about the food stops. And then maybe one small line about some site that we saw, back to the food, back to the food. So I think
Yeah.
there's just so many of them that I can't pick just one. It's throughout my whole life.
There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. My wife and I are both big foodies. Our son, who is about 18 and a half, he's a big foodie as well. And from a young age, used to say, remember that thing that we ate at that place and it had this decorations, or it was in this city, or whatever the case is. And we would say to him, jokingly, he never actually had one, is like, hey buddy, why don't you go consult your food journal and see where that was, because I don't remember that memory. Funny that he's based his life on he's eaten the memories. That's
I think it makes it easy though. Like for me, I find it very easy to remember the particular foods because it's such a sensory experience, right? Like so many
yes.
of your senses are involved versus maybe something that you just looked at and you were there. Maybe it wasn't as interactive or something. Like
Yeah,
there's just certain things that stand out.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about bringing the joy to eating. How do our senses play a role in making food more satisfying or more fulfilling?
One of the biggest things I talk to about my clients around this is that aspect of variety. Of course, preferences always comes into play, right? We tend to have preferences for certain flavors or certain textures, things like that. But we also, just as human beings, have very big drive for novelty. in our
Mhm.
experiences and in how we experience our food. So when we're talking about, like, even when you think about, whatever meal you ate that was your favorite, if you do happen to have a favorite, it
Yes.
probably had a little bit of variety. It wasn't probably just like that kind of one note, blah, kind of taste. It was a little more interesting. Visually, it probably looked pretty cool. It might have been connected to some memories, but the actual experience of our senses, like the texture, the taste, the temperature, the look of it, the smells, all of that adds to the appeal of that food. And it's one of the ways that we can increase our interest in food. It can give us more satisfaction. It can just make it more interesting and more fun.
Mhm.
Even normal thing, right? You put it on a fancy plate and you light some candles, and then the environment becomes fancier and it's the same food, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just interesting. My mom used to color our foods for like certain holidays. Like she'd put the coloring in for St. Patrick's Day.
There we
Um,
go.
yeah, so just things like that. Like it makes a memory and it's different. It was the same food, but it was just different colors. So it makes it amplifies the experience of
Yes,
eating.
absolutely. When I was going to culinary school many moons ago, the thing that still sticks with me, one of the many things that still sticks with me, is the instructors would tell us, especially in the plating classes and things like that, that we eat with our eyes first.
Yes.
So we're visualizing the plate of food that's down in front of us, and the mound of brown mush that tastes amazing, but it's a mound of brown mush. And that's not going to give our brain much to work with. And so, and then I would almost say that the actual taste, the actual flavor is the last thing that we experience with because we're feeling the environment around us, we're hearing the things that are happening around us, we're having great conversations with the people that we're sitting at the table with, and if you're lucky, and yeah, so it is an all around sensory experience. So I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Fun
yeah.
fact there. You said the taste is the last thing we experience. It's really true because like our digestion process even starts before we're actually sticking the food in our mouths. Like we start smelling it, we start thinking about the food, and that digestive system starts going. It's like preparing for the food even before we've actually eaten it. So it's really, I don't know, to me, it just is amazing like how much that biology that we can observe backs up just that felt experience of how we are around food.
Absolutely. Yeah, we start to salivate when we smell something good, and that's the very first part of digestion. Yeah, I love that. You're a professional nutrition consultant. What advice do you give to your clients in this very fast-paced world? How to slow down and actually savor our food to enjoy it? I guess this is an overall question of mindfulness when we're sitting down to eat.
Yes. That really depends on the client, of course, and what their experience like. They're feeling a little bit like rushed or disconnected, right?
Mm.
I think in general, most people can really benefit from just taking a couple of breaths to be present in that moment. And if it's just for that first bite. So often we kind of just rush through, we're doing something else. That's life sometimes, right? Not every meal is going to be first amazing, 5 course sit down thing, like on the beach in a vacation spot, right? Sometimes it's just food. And I think one of the things that we can do is we could start getting very overly conscious about trying to be mindful. And then we start putting on the pressure. Now I have to get it perfect or I have to do it right. And even cooking, like it's not exact, not like that,
Yes.
right? So food in general, it's not exact. Like our eating experience, it's not that big of a deal. So we can
Mm.
just say, okay, take a couple of deep breaths. I'm going to try to focus on being present, appreciating as much as I can about whatever is in front of me. Or if it's just that pile of brown mush, because that's what I had to eat that day, like at least I'm grateful that I have food.
Yes, of course, yes.
And then we just get into it. Like, what's the first bite or two? We just practice that mindful bite. If you don't want to do it at the beginning, like maybe you're just so hungry, you don't want to stop or something, or that my brown mush doesn't look so appealing, okay, we're choosing not to do it. But that's an intentional decision rather than something we've just rushed through. But I have several clients who will do that at the beginning of the meal and maybe like mid-meal as a check-in. Just like, "Hey, I'm going to take a mindful bite versus trying to eat the whole meal mindfully, which may or may not just be realistic or might feel a little bit like a burden. especially if we are in that middle of a conversation or something where we do want to split some of our attention, that can be a way of being present to savor, but also present in the rest of whatever is happening at that meal.
Yeah, I love sitting down and taking it all in. I think it goes back to what we were talking as well. Taking it all in and sitting down and taking that breath or two before you dive in, I think is a really great idea. Let's switch gears a little bit. One of your philosophies in your what you call the all foods fit philosophy. Tell us a little bit about that and what does it really mean in practice?
Sure. Whole foods fits is pretty much what it sounds like. There's no good or bad foods from like a morality standpoint, meaning that you're not going to become a better or worse person based on what you eat. So what that looks like practically, because we know like nutrition science, right, still exists. The carrot is going to be digested differently and used differently and has different benefits than a carrot cake, for example. But it doesn't mean that you're better or worse for choosing one or the other. So what we would do is we would say, okay, we're tuning into the internal cues of our body instead of external food rules, which might say like the shoulds or should not. And we're going to say, okay, what would really satisfy right now? What would be amazing now and after I eat, not just right now. So if I'm like at the beginning of a meal and I'm really hungry and those carrots sound really amazing, great, I'm going to have the carrots, especially maybe they're like like turmeric glazed grilled carrots or something. Like, "Ooh, that sounds good, right? I
Yeah.
want to try that." But maybe it's at the end of the meal and turmeric glazed carrots does not sound so good because I'm getting to the point where I'm a little bit comfortably full early on. I still have some room for dessert, right? So maybe that carrot cake with some cardamom ice cream might taste even better, right? So then I'm going to choose that instead or with it or whatever, right? And that's how you make those decisions instead of saying, oh, I can only have the carrots today because I already ate the carrot cake yesterday. Now I have to make up for it. Or I shouldn't eat the carrot cake. It's bad for me. I'm being so bad. I ate carrot cake, right? You hear those phrases a lot, especially when we're out
Absolutely.
on vacation. We hear those things like all the time. I'm being so bad. I'm going to have to make up for it. No, not in an all foods fit kind of way. Like you can just eat. It's okay to eat and enjoy yourself and have that balance without trying so hard. It's not moderation. I don't teach moderation actually, but I teach like how do we have that satisfaction because that's a better driver of actual health outcomes and of enjoying your food, right? Like literally that's what it is. Satisfaction is enjoying your food.
I think there's something to be said between for the balance between physical health and mental health. And I think a lot of mental health has to do with feeling good about what you're doing, being satisfied physically, but there's also I'm sure there's a dopamine or something else that's happening while you're eating. I'm sure that's the case. And if you're eating dried boiled chicken every day just to be healthy, what is that doing to your mind? I don't know. And I just wonder what if and also it's been drilled into our brain from a very early age, exactly to your point. These foods are good and these foods are bad. And the idea of cheat day or a cheat meal, and even that connotation of the word cheats means you're something taboo or something like that.
Yeah, it's so connected, right? How we think about our foods, why we're eating certain foods or not eating certain foods, just a quality of life piece. Like I used to work in a hospital and I would see clients on super restrictive diet in their like 90s and they already have very little appetite. So from a practical standpoint, we would want them to be more nourished. We want them to have quality of life. Putting them on a very restrictive diet isn't the way to do that. So I think for a lot of us, even though we don't want to wait until we're 90 to experience that and have somebody give us the permission, we're still not giving ourselves permission now. So I I like to be able to let people know, hey, it's okay. It's okay to eat. It's okay to enjoy. It's okay to relax about your food. It's not the end of the world kind of decision making here. And if it feels that way, that's a very good sign to get help. One, you're not alone. There's lots of people who
Oh,
experience
of course.
right. And there's just lots of people who don't do that, who have that freedom around their food, and you could be one of them, right?
Yeah, yeah. You are a certified intuitive eating counselor. What are some common myths or misconceptions, if you will, when you hear about intuitive eating?
Sure. Probably the biggest one is maybe if give myself that permission to eat, I would eat only insert whatever food they think they're out of control around, right? And generally, what I would say is, okay, one, did you try it? And two, like that usually happens because of restriction, right? That out of control feeling is very common.
Yes.
It's not your fault. But as an example, like you and I will do this example now, if you're willing.
Of
Um,
course.
okay, we're just talking, right? I'm going to set up some rules here for this next experiment. Okay. While I'm talking, don't think about the purple elephant. Okay. Okay. That's
Understood.
all right. So we're talking about this food and nutrition and the ways that we're doing things and the way we're thinking about our food and all that is really important, right?
Yes.
And you and I are having this engaging conversation. And how many times did you think about the purple elephant?
At least once or twice.
At least once or twice. Were you thinking about the purple elephant prior to me telling you not to do that?
No, I was not.
No, because it wasn't a big deal until I made it a big deal. And now it is. And if you didn't, like some people are like, now I think about it all the time. Like it was just in my brain visual space, right? Hey, one or two times is pretty good. And now you probably had to expend energy or willpower, right? To not think about it because you were following the rules and playing along
Right.
with my experiment. But that's the kind of setup that we have when we try to make foods like off limits or bad foods or have that dichotomy. And so I like around that permission to eat, it feels really scary. It does. But when you have that support or when you're doing it in a certain structure, like it actually can be amazing how much progress you can make on that and how foods feel like they're not that big of a deal anymore because it just loses that like the all encompassing shininess of that object, right? It's not so enthralling to you anymore. Like you can still enjoy food. A lot of
Yes.
my clients would argue that they enjoy food even more than they did before, but it's not that thing where you have to now spend so much energy to not do something or to stay in control. Because often what you're seeing around the people who feel like if they let go of control, they're going to binge it all is they're not as in control as they think they are anyway. So you just end up miserable and guilt ridden. So if you're stuck in that and you don't want to be stuck in that, it's worth giving it another try, right? Or it's worth
Yes.
exploring whether really from somebody who knows what it is versus somebody maybe who's heard of it a little bit and has Googled it a bit. Do you think it might be worth exploring with some people if you are curious but worried, right?
Yeah, that you brought up restriction a couple times, and I think that is such a huge switch in our brain when we whether implicitly or explicitly feel restricted from eating. I can't have ice cream. Let's just use that as an example, whether it's you're lactose intolerant or whatever the reason might be that you're there. As human beings, we tend to obsess over stuff like that. Absolutely. Yeah. How does intuitive eating support people talk about going into dieting? Whether dieting is a term that how does intuitive eating support people in achieving health goals? Let's just put it that way, health goals without those restrictions or those rigid rules.
Yeah. The first way it makes that possible, more possible than if you were restricting. It just
Mhm.
makes it more probable that you're going to be hitting those health goals and increase your labs, for example, or those kind of things. Because when we're eating without that restraint, not like without restraint, like stuffing ourselves silly, right? Because that's not satisfaction. That's just
Mhm.
discomfort. So when we're eating to satisfaction and following the intuitive eating principles, and really working those out in practice, we end up seeing people meeting their nutrition goals better than if we were talking about people who in studies are considered restrained eaters, like the really
Mhm.
conscientious eaters, the ones who are trying really hard to meet those health goals. like eating enough variety, eating enough fruits and vegetables, getting those, like eating to comfortable fullness rather than overeating past that comfortable fullness, just figuring out how to manage your emotions without using food, all of those kinds of things. We end up seeing that more with intuitive eaters than those who are just trying really hard to meet those goals. So,
Sure.
and of course, and that's frustrating for the people who are trying really hard, right? Because they're trying really hard. It's not for lack of trying. It's just that we, as a culture, don't teach the way to do it. Like we're just teaching faulty methods.
Yeah, it's an interesting quandary we find ourselves in because we want to be happy, we want to be satisfied, but we also want to be healthy, and things aren't necessarily easy for every person out there. And I like to be as general on this show as I possibly can. So we're not going to hit everyone on this end of the spectrum or everyone on this end of the spectrum. So I appreciate the information. Absolutely. Let's change things up one more time. I love to talk about travel on this show as well. When it comes to food, when it comes to wine, when it comes to just enjoying life, period. I feel that traveling is one of the greatest things we can do for ourselves as human beings. But while we're traveling, it does tend to disrupt our routine, our everyday life. How do you help your clients stay mindful when they're on the road?
Yeah, it's the same things, right? You are addressing the basics, right? Like
Mhm.
routines get disrupted. So often our sleep schedules a little odd, or maybe
Sure.
because of the time differences, eating at different times than we're used to, or because of cultural differences, we're eating different times, different foods, doing different activities. We might be really tired. It might be a different weather. Maybe the dehydration is a factor, right? All these
Yes.
things, of course, they matter, right? Those are the specifics. But a lot of times it comes down to, hey, are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you drinking stuff? Are you staying safe, like from food safety perspective? Are you enjoying yourself? Like that satisfaction. Are you really focused on that satisfaction of being present, especially when we're on vacation or
Yes.
especially when we're traveling somewhere new, right? Who wants to go somewhere when they don't want to eat anything or they want to, but they're not allowing themselves to?
Right.
Be present, give yourself the permission. It's okay to enjoy yourself and to eat. And then it's a lot of, yeah, let's tune in to what sounds amazing to you right now and letting it be okay if not everything is 100% hitting the mark, right? Like sometimes we think something's going to be amazing and it's not. And we have to sit with the disappointment, right? Whether you're cooking at home and it just didn't turn out right, or if you're
Yeah.
like somewhere amazing and it just was a flat meal, right? Okay, that happens. Disappointing, right? Especially when you're traveling and you only have limited amount of meals somewhere. But it happens and that's just life. And how do we deal with that and working through that option? Okay. Now what do I want next? What do I want to do? What would help me feel more satisfied in this situation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. There's other things like practical, right? Like if you're out and about, you might be hungry and you don't know the food landscape in the area or something. You might need to pack some snacks, right? Or on a travel day, you might need to have some snacks or have a plan. But that's just more of those practical, like everyday kinds of situations, right?
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. My wife and I travel together a lot. We travel a lot for the wine business, and I find that to be very important is to pack little bags of healthy snacks, whether it's a protein bar or fruits, if you're able, or something along those lines, because that can save you in a, pardon the pun, but that can save you in a pickle. Instead of, and again, donuts aren't necessarily bad, but instead of walking into the donut shop because you're hungry and it's there and it's available to you, it might be great if you had a little pack of trail mix or something in your bag. So that's great advice.
Yeah. And even just an
Sure.
example, right? Thinking about that as that might not sound as like it would taste amazing in that
Of
moment
course.
because you're hungry. Anything would taste amazing. But that donut is going to last about 30 minutes to an hour. And then you're going to be hungry again and you're going to have a sugar crash. So it might
Right.
not feel that great afterwards. So that trail mix might have a little lasting power to it, or trail mix plus the donut, maybe at least round it out. So it would be, that's one of those decisions that we talk to when I'm working like one-on-one with a client, being like, "Well, what is that specific situation you're worried about? Or what is that situation that you tend to find yourself in? Let's plan around that, or let's plan for that happening anyway." And because sometimes like the donut shop is the thing to visit in that town, right?
Of
So
course. Yeah.
how do we do that, right? How do we make that so that you don't have that crash and feel gross in 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Maybe you eat something first, right? Like an actual meal before too. There's lots of options, right?
Yes. 100%. Let's talk about that physiological effects on the body for just a second, because I I know what food does for me up here, and I know what wine does for me up here, and it makes you feel good, and whatever the hormones are, or whatever is happening up there in the brain. But the physiological effects of eating a donut versus a handful of nuts, for example. Give us a breakdown on what's happening to your body when we do that.
Sure. So from a very high level, the
Please.
body is going to digest the donut, which is mainly fats and carbohydrates, differently than the handful of nuts, which is fats and proteins primarily. So fats and proteins digest slower from your stomach. They empty slower from your stomach, and then they will get absorbed. Fats and proteins could be used for energy, but our primary energy source is that carbohydrates, which is why you end up with more of like a spike in energy after you eat something that's very carbohydrate heavy. And then
Mhm.
sometimes you end up with a crash or kind of a slump because your blood sugar has gone up and then it's gone down. So that happens more when either there's a very large amount of carbohydrates or when you're eating carbohydrates without a lot of protein and fats to slow that digestion down. So you get more steep spike and a more steep drop.
Sure.
Blood sugar is going to go up and down like throughout the day in response to meals, all these kinds of things, how well your body can process carbohydrates and how well it uses insulin and all these things.
Right.
Also your sleep, like talking about sleep previously. So there's a
Yeah.
lot here that we're not going into, but in general, if you combine that carbohydrates with fats or proteins, it's going to be a little bit less steep spike and drop than
Mhm.
if you just ate it like plain carbohydrates, right? So the more that you can slow down that process, the less steep, the more gradual that rise and fall is going to be. And the way that we interpret that feeling is it's more satisfying or it's longer lasting. So when you think about like a meal, a very well-rounded meal with all your components, speaking from like the kitchen side of things, like you've got your starch, you've got your protein, you've got your vegetable, right? If you think about it that way, then that's more that well-rounded meal. It's got all those components in it. If you're looking at something that is that poor little naked chicken breast there, that's just protein. One, it's really boring, but it's just protein. And that's going to digest differently. It's also not going to give you as much energy in the run as you would see if you had a starch with that, because the starch is going to help digest, give you that energy, help you think, clear up that brain fogginess, be able to last long because you still have that protein with it, right?
Yeah.
But compared to that, just the poor sad chicken breast, at least you've got some energy now. Because if your body is very low on carbohydrates, it will use very inefficiently your fats and your proteins instead as carbohydrates as energy because we have carbohydrate dependent tissue. And so it's a very inefficient process. And it's not the most pleasant, like speaking about mood and things like that. That's when we
Sure.
tend to see like more mood swings and things. So we really like to see like more well rounded meals, the exact amounts of course varies for everyone and what you've been doing that day and what the meal is. And sometimes just what you're in the mood for, right? Like sometimes you're only going to be in the mood for a donut and you don't want to put anything with it. All right. But then we plan around that going, I will probably be hungry in another 30 minutes. So maybe I should plan to also have something else at that time instead.
Certainly.
So
Let's talk. Yeah, yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about, especially here in the state, really everywhere for the most part, is we have the variety. We have mostly everything available. And again, I'm speaking very generally, so don't message me on instant. Not, I'm speaking very generally. Most of us have access to everything, and so balancing the carbs and the vegetables, your broccoli with your chicken and your potatoes and all of that stuff. That people tell us that, but it's very cool to hear it from someone who lives every day and teaches it. Let's talk for a minute about your business. What services are you providing for your clients?
Yes, primarily I do one-on-one nutrition services and counseling. I'd sit down with somebody like this when we
Mhm.
talk about, hey, what's going on in your life? What's your goal? How's your relationship with your food? What's been going on with that? What do you want to see change? And what's been keeping you? How have you tried that before? Things like that. And then we talk through those situations, very much like we've been talking about this donut example, right? Or we might say, hey, this was the situation I was in. We talk it out and we start coming up with some options, or I give you education like we've done on this show, right? It's like this. We have a conversation. If you've ever gone to any other medical appointment, it's like, especially if you're work on the medical nutrition therapy side of things, that would be like nutrition to help treat and prevent conditions or diseases. So there'd be more of that medical side, the intake and like looking through your chart notes and things like that. But pretty much it's the same thing because I'm still me and my style is very similar to like maybe talk therapy, combination of that and a coach. All right, we're just
Yeah.
having a chat. I'm going to help you make it practical, right? I want you to be able to achieve your goals, to live the life like we talked about quality of life, right?
Yeah.
To be able to work through those things so that you can have that freedom around your food and enjoy your life without all the stuff holding you back.
Do you have a particular client avatar that you work with more than others, or practice open to everyone?
Yeah, it's open to everyone who's a good fit. I primarily work with women. I only work with adults, but I do work with some great colleagues who work with kids. So if you're interested, let me know. But I primarily work with the women who are very interested in transforming that food relationship to be a little bit more joyful and healthy. Because, like we've been talking about, a lot of times it's pushed as one or the other, but I have seen that it's both. You can really get both. So I help with that. I also do a lot of work with folks who have ADHD because there's a lot of food challenges that come up with that or other
Yep.
neurodivergence. And so even if your relationship with food might be okay, there's just the practical aspects of eating or food prep that can be quite challenging. And I have a diagnosis as well. So like it's just the way that I practice. And then I looked around and I was like, oh, look, half of my clients are like this. That kind of became a subspecialty of mine, but my passion is like really anybody who's focused on that joyful and healthy relationship with their food. And it tends to be the majority tend to be women. I work with anybody who's a good fit. So if you're interested, yeah, I'm available.
Fantastic. And yeah, it sounds like what you're doing is you are helping people feel at peace in their own skin and around the idea of food or the reality. Yes. It's not so much an idea as it is a reality of being a mammal. Is we have to eat, and being able to do it, being able to eat to where it makes you feel good physically and mentally, emotionally. Sounds like that's your goal. Am I hitting the mark at all?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, perfect. I love that. I love that. Let's call it self-compassion. Self-compassion is such a critical piece of building a healthy relationship with people, with food, and our bodies. Do you, as a coach, do you help people get over those self-compassion humps?
Yes. I practice a lot from the perspective of self compassion is
Mhm.
really important. There's I would say that's probably one of the core philosophies that I draw on, among others, but that is definitely in there quite a bit. And it's something that, again, like we've been saying, right? You're not alone. Everyone struggles with this, but some people struggle with this more than others. And it tends to come along sometimes with some of that restriction and the guilt around the food. So it's absolutely important to address that. Like, how are we treating ourselves? Not just about our food choices. And I'm not a mental health counselor. And it is definitely within my scope for certain situations to talk about self compassion and how are we managing some of these things? How are we taking care of ourselves through food or otherwise, right? How are we being gentle? How are we treating each other? How are we treating ourselves the way we treat other people or each other, right?
Yes.
But it's way easier to give compassion to somebody else than it is to ourselves. So all of those things I talk about a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I've said this from a very young age, and this has been a philosophy throughout my entire adolescence into adulthood is be happy. Whatever it takes to make yourself happy. And that is certainly a mental thing, but it has everything to do, or at least a lot to do, with how we take care of our bodies, what we put into our bodies, what we take off of our bodies, and all of that stuff, the people that we're around, or in some cases, more importantly, not around, things like that. Is being happy is a huge part of life. And I understand, and I'm not to go on a tangent about there are physiological things that happen to us that make us not happy. I understand that. There's the and all of those things. But as much as you can make yourself happy without outside influences changing the way you feel, I think it's such a huge part of life.
Yeah, because if you're waiting around for someone else to do it, they might not do it.
Yeah.
And then what? Then you're just going to be unhappy. Versus if you help yourself do some things that will make you happy or increase the odds at least, then if someone else makes you happy also, that's just a bonus, right? You're not waiting around and feeling like you missed out on something if that didn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Our happiness starts within, absolutely. And obviously, outside factors are going to affect it. But at the end, and this is something that I learned quite a few years ago when I was going through coaching training, is our reaction to outside stimuli is coming from us. So we control the way we react positively, negatively, or react at all. And that certainly has a lot to do with what we're talking about here today. Our relationship with food, it can either make us happy or unhappy, depending on where you are in your life. But at the end of the day, we have control over that as human beings.
Yeah.
That's healthy is a word that people throw around. Healthy is, I think, very subjective term. It's healthy emotionally, healthy mentally, physically, whatever the case would be. When you're talking to your clients, how do you define health or healthy?
I think it depends. Like you said, there's a lot of different contexts for that word. Sometimes I'll actually even avoid using it
Okay.
because if somebody is coming in from a very restrictive mindset, often they have pretty clear definition in for themselves about what healthy is or isn't. It's necessarily a healthy definition or useful definition, which is what I normally say is it helpful
Sure.
or is this unhelpful? It is probably more unhelpful for them to continue thinking about this as a healthy versus unhealthy, but it may be more helpful for them to say, this is a nourishing food or this is very satisfying. And so typically we shift to satisfying. For some of my clients, healthy as an actual term is totally fine. And they just mean, did I eat enough fruits and vegetables today to make my everything work correctly and feel good and have energy? And so to them, that's going to be different. And so I usually am pretty careful about which words I use, depending on what the client situation is. But I would say, like, in general, instead of saying healthy or anything like that, if we're just defining, hey, what might be a pretty good general way to eat, be like, am I including variety? Am I including fruits and vegetables? Am I satisfied with my food? Am I tuning in to my internal cues rather than using the external rules? Do I have
Mhm.
supports, not just for the food and eating, but do I have supports in my life, right? Social supports and financial supports. Do I have what I need financially? Am I feeling good about my career choice and my profession? Do I feel good about my social connections and I actually have time invested in that and energy invested in that? Do I feel good about the space I'm living in? And am I doing something for being outside and doing things like that we know are associated with health, right? All these pieces that are outside of just what we're eating plays big role in our health. Like you were mentioning, it's so many factors. And I think that's, especially for those of us who have trainings as coaches and things like that, like we're very used to focusing on many factors versus just the one strict definition. So I can't give you like a specific definition because that would really depend on what we're talking about.
Of course, absolutely. And that's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say is healthy is such a broad term that it does not every person in the world. And that's what I was getting at with the subjectiveness of the word. And I completely agree with that. What's right for me is not the same thing that's right for you or the person down the street or the person on the other side of the world. We have to take healthy on a very person by person basis. And I'm so glad that there are folks in the world like you that are helping us as individuals blaze that trail, walk that path, and understand it better for us. Shelly, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so very much. Any parting nuggets you want to send us home with?
I guess just the question I'd like to end on is if you're thinking about eating or a decision, you can always go back to the question about what would be the most nourishing thing that I can do for me right now? What would be the most nourishing thing I can do for me right now? Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's not, but that's always a good guiding question. And if that's too perfectionist-sticky, then you just go, what would a nourishing thing I can do for me right now?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your input, the great insights into eating and enjoying yourselves and just being human beings. Thank you so much for being a patient.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you are feeling great about this episode and feeling a little more at peace with your plate. I really loved Shelly's final piece of advice, simply asking yourself, what would be the most nourishing thing I can do for me right now? It shifts the focus from restriction to self-care, which is such a powerful tool. And I also appreciated the science between the donut versus trail mix debate. It's not about shame, it's about biology. Understanding how proteins and fats slow down digestion compared to carbs gives us the power to make choices that help us feel good rather than following a rule book. If you want to connect with Shelly, learn more about her nutrition mindset coaching, you can find her at confidentnutritionnow.com. She's also on Instagram and has a great Facebook page called Confident Nutrition with Shelly Najjar. I will have those links in the show notes for you, so please take a look for those and go ahead and follow Shelly and listen to the great stuff that she's doing. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Pour and Explore. I'd love to hear your thoughts, love to hear your stories or questions. Drop me a message at cheers@thewineguy.vin. That's cheers@thewineguy.vin. Or let's connect on TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook. Grab those links at thewineguy.vin. Until next time, let's keep wondering and wandering. Cheers, everybody.